Listen to Triple Threat.
Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of Triple Threat. My name is Tom.
Hi, I'm Garrett.
And this episode is brought to you by Square...
No, it's brought to you by Raycon. This episode isn't brought to you by anyone because we didn't sell out.
Exactly.
Which cannot be said for our guests, our subjects today.
Right, so we are talking about The Who's beloved 1967 album, The Who Sell Out.
Yes.
It has just, as the time of this recording, received the Super Deluxe Edition treatment, and so we thought it would be a perfect opportunity to go through the original 13-track album, and since there is a ton of bonus material, we're going to have a little bonus section at the end of this.
Right.
Like, what are some of our favorites, and with the new box set, what are some things that fans should check out if they haven't already?
Yeah.
So, we got quite a bit to tackle here.
Yeah.
But, of course, we'll give you the album history. We didn't mention it's their third album.
Yes.
Released in December of 1967.
Yeah, dates are conflicting depending on who you look at, but it's 15th or 16th of December in 67.
Right.
The album is structured in a bit of a concept. It's supposed to imitate the sound of a pirate radio broadcast, which was, in Britain, it used to be illegal for radio stations to go offshore on a boat and broadcast, but that was the only way that kids could listen to the hip new jams coming in from America a lot of the time.
Right.
Because the BBC controls the airwaves in Britain. And for a while, that was the way that The Who and their contemporaries listened to the things that would influence them. So this is a sort of a tribute to the then recently outlawed pirate radio stations. Some of them even went on until much, much later. I think Radio Caroline only went off the air in like 2012.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And not only do The Who listen to this station, but they also owe their success to pirate radio. I mean, their first single, I Can't Explain, in the UK went to number 8, and you have to kind of wonder if that would have even happened if pirate radio didn't even exist.
Right.
And even My Generation, which was their highest charting UK single, went all the way to number 2, and you kind of got to thank pirate radio for that as well.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And so this was kind of like a love letter, an homage, with The Who doing some of their own jingles, Keith and John doing some of their own little jingles.
Oh my God, Keith and John just had a ball on this, especially if you listen through all the outtakes where they just kept coming up with ad after ad.
Yeah, just throw it into the studio, go do your thing, and stuff like Premier Drums, they got free drums. Rotosound Strings, which is John's bass string of choice, They got free stuff. John Mason Cars, free car, please.
No, not this time.
Not this time.
You want a Jaguar? We should make a song about
Jaguars. Yeah. And some of these jingles, we should point out, did turn into, I guess, full blown songs or ditties or tunes, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Some last 7 seconds. Some last a whole 2 minutes,
right, or more,
and they're even.
And we'll talk about them.
Yeah.
So let's get into it then, shall we?
All right, sure.
Our first track is the only track that was donated to The Who for this album, Armonia, City in the Sky, written by Speedy Keen of Thunderclap Newman, and he's also a co-lead vocalist on this one.
Oh, yeah, I've always wondered if Roger's vocals are sped up, which it definitely sounds like they are.
I think a little bit, but also it's another guy singing.
Yeah, there are times when it sounds like 2 vocals, and I just always assumed that was just Roger double-tracked.
I think they double-track with 2 people. Okay,
well, still, this is the closest song that The Who... Okay, well, there's 2 songs in this album. The Who got to, quote-unquote, like, standard psychedelic.
Yeah.
And, of course, this one, I have to say, The Who did it, but they didn't write it, of course.
Sure.
This seems very Tomorrow Never Knows inspired.
Right, there's a lot of backwards guitar parts, and you mentioned the sped-up vocals, and just weird effects happening here, but when you strip those away, it comes down to, it's just a pretty basic... like rock or R&B track of the time.
Right.
And that's good. It's fine.
It's fine, yeah.
It's a fun song.
It's fun, and...
it sets the tone immediately, too.
And one thing that we should say about this album, there are different listening experiences. There are 3 distinct mixes of this album you can hear. There's the original mono mix, the original stereo mix, and then in 1995, The Who did a remixed stereo mix.
Yeah.
And so this album, along with My Generation, have the distinction of having like 3 different ways that you can listen to it.
I think Who Are You is the same. I'm pretty sure it has three different mixes for each of its reissues.
Huh. Well, I guess I only know about 2.
Yeah.
But anyway, with the Who Sell Out, it's totally different because in the original mono mix of the album, a lot of the jingles kind of slam into one another.
A little bit.
But I think that was almost done on purpose because it's pirate radio. It's not professional.
Oh, yeah, it's 100% intentional. The idea of the album is that you could loop it a bunch of times and it would give that impression of, well, they only have so much music to play, so they kept playing the same songs again.
It feels like there was more quote-unquote work put into stereo mix because a lot of the jingles nicely fade into the songs fade into the jingles.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think I might prefer the stereo mix more than the mono, but the mono's fun to listen to because it's like, I'm being a rebel listening to pirate radio.
Yeah.
In the stereo mix, and even in the remix, the opening guitars will go like from speaker to speaker, and then they'll crash in your left speaker, and that's when the drums kick in. And of course, with a mono mix, you wouldn't get that. And so a lot of the effects in the mono mix are still audible, but in stereo, they're all around you, man. It's definitely a trip to listen to.
Right.
And like you said, not a bad way to start the album. It really kind of gets you in there. But interestingly, that this would be the only Who album to lead off with a non-original.
Yeah, and especially one that they went so far as to like bring in another guy to co-lead the vocals with Roger. And it's especially odd, like, we'll touch on it a little bit later, but Roger doesn't have much of a presence on this album, unfortunately.
Yes.
That's really the only thing that holds it back from being an awesome album for me. I really like it, but I just feel like he gets the short end of the stick in this one. Yes,
there are, I mean, we'll definitely get to it, and especially we'll get to, like, all the bonus material. You'll hear that there was definitely a lot more songs. Could have been a different album.
Yeah, we were talking before we recorded that there were plans to make an album before this and after this, and I think they might have even flirted with the idea of making a double album with the Who Sell Out, but just for whatever reason decided to stick with a single, and I think that was probably the better choice, because that would mean they would have to make way more ads to keep the concept going.
Right. Also, I think a single album definitely helps them because as much as we love The Who and their journey so far, a double album at this point in their career, I feel, would have been really risky.
Yeah. As prolific as they are, I don't think there's a lot of super quality material in here yet. Like, of the type that you would get with their later double albums and even, Who's Next, where you have fewer tracks, you have much stronger tracks, though.
Right. And one thing I do want to get off the bat before we get back to the songs is that in hindsight, the Who get better with each album until you substitute which album you feel like, okay, here's where they started to maybe go down a bit.
Right. But some people would say that they start sloping off after Who's Next. I would say they peak at Quadrophenia.
Right.
That kind of thing.
But the whole point is, like, My Generation, pretty solid landmark album. A quick one, or Happy Jack, if that's where you lived, it was called. It was kind of, nice step forward, bands, contributing songs, each of them.
Yeah.
And then Who Sell Out was kind of like, this was like, it was more of a step forward. Tommy, more of a step forward.
Yeah.
Even if you count Live at Leeds, which you should, another step forward.
Yeah.
They just kept topping themselves, and I kind of want to make that blanket statement.
Yeah, and they kept also, like, reevaluating their own image, their identity with each album as well. With this one, they lean not heavily into psychedelia, but they said, we can do that.
Right.
And, you'd watch them go on stage with these regal frilly collars, and Pete would go on full, like, 1700s ruffles, and
that's what I was going to call it, the Victorian era.
No, that would have been earlier than that.
Okay.
And all of the shawls and everything. I never really felt that they quite fit in with Flower Power as their image, but it made for an interesting time.
Well, one could say they didn't fit in too much. They were their own standout thing.
Yeah.
Some of the tracks that we'll get to will be like, this is the closest thing the Who got to writing this kind of song or this kind of song. And that brings me back to Harmony's City in the Sky, because even though they didn't write it, this is the closest so far in their career they've gotten to straight up psychedelic.
Right.
And it kind of makes sense that it's written by someone else, and it's also risky this would be the album opener, because even though they didn't do a double album, they still took a risk, I think, by putting this as the opening track.
Sure.
But how many people checked the credits to see this was actually written by Townsend at the time? Probably close to none, I'm gonna guess.
Yeah. So yeah, solid way to begin. Especially we say to begin, it actually begins with the Days of the Week jingle from Radio London.
Yes.
Which I think the Who actually got in trouble for using a bunch of jingles without permission, but you know, that's not our concern right now.
It's not our concern, no. And after the song ends, it goes into another jingle, which is not them.
No, it goes right into Heinz Baked Beans.
Well, I mean, the Wonderful Radio London jingle.
Oh, yeah, that one, yes.
Whoopee!
Yeah, made in our backyard, actually, in Dallas.
Nice.
But yes, then it goes into
Heinz Baked Beans.
Which I have the dumbest soft spot for this stupid jingle.
I think you're for calling it stupid, because
oh my god,
it's stupid but silly. I'm not saying I hate it. Don't get offended. Like you, Tom, you think it's stupid.
Yeah,
but go on.
It's pretty much a nearly instrumental song with occasional lines from Mooney and Pete and
Pete again.
Then Pete again, and then John just asking the wife of the household what's for tea. And
then you get and the same musical riff just appears, and each time.
But what's really cool about it is they build on it.
Right.
It starts with just John playing the brass again. I think it's just a trumpet to start with. And then each time they get back to that riff, they build on it by adding more instruments. We need an organ. We need a bass drum. Somebody bring in like 5 more horns for John to play an overdub. It's a lot of fun. It just ends with, we're eating Heinz Baked Beans.
That's what quote unquote tea is for today.
Yeah.
No, it's
well, no, it's like, because tea is kind of a fourth meal that the British people have.
Okay. Well, still, it's so funny, and obviously they wouldn't have gotten in trouble with Heinz Baked Beans, because Heinz Baked Beans is literally on the cover of this album, and poor Roger is just soaking in it.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about the cover, because that's another aspect, a whole layer to the nature of this beast.
Right. With a title like The Who Sell Out, they are playing on that kind of double meaning of like, here are all these jingles, and like all these companies want to sponsor us, and so we'll have Pete use Odorono on the cover, and Roger taking a bath in Heinz Baked Beans, and
so they kind of either built these jingles and these ads and fake commercials for companies and said, hey, can we use this on the album? Or the people that were already sponsoring them, they said, hey, we'll make an ad for you on our album and call it art.
Right.
And that's where they get Heinz Baked Beans, Medak, Odorono, and Charles Atlas on the cover. With poor Pete was very self-conscious about the cover. He said in his autobiography, because he was very thin at that time. But I think it came off pretty well. He has this goofy grin that sells it.
Yeah. And, you can go online and find all sorts of outtake photos, and they're all amusing to look at. Some include Roger eating the beans, which is kind of like,
well, especially when you know that he's sitting in a pool of nearly frozen baked beans.
Oh, I didn't know they were no.
He said they had just gotten out of the fridge when they poured him in there, and it's like, you couldn't have left him out for just a little while, because and Roger got sick, he said, either from pneumonia or just a really bad cold of sitting in cold baked beans.
Right. And then Keith on the back cover is using Medak cream, and he's got the largest draw-on pimple you've ever seen on his face. Yeah, it's like, Keith, that's a medical issue. You've got a pimple that big.
And Pete said Keith was also kind of awkward about that one because he was prone to breakouts at the time. And then John, the lucky asshole,
with a model and a teddy bear, and
easiest photo job ever.
And even in the outtake photos, you can see one where like the model's like, she's just waiting, and John's still got the dopey ass grin on him because he's just having a good time.
he's just wearing a loincloth, and she's standing there in a bikini, and he was like, "This is dope.
This is the best."
Yeah. Anyway, so it's our brief cover.
That's our brief cover of the cover in the middle of the track listing.
And speaking of attractive ladies, Marianne and with a shaky hand.
Yes. One of the few tracks that from the session there are like distinctive versions, and this is the third and final one they chose for the album.
Right, the acoustic version of the song.
Right.
The other two had been with electric and with organ, and I think this is probably the best of those three. Personally,
I think so too. I mean, earlier when I said like this album features a lot of the Who, this is the closest they ever got to this seemed like the closest the Who got to writing a song about a girl, and like a girl who's pretty and attractive, not exactly like longing for her.
Yeah,
so that's why I say this is the closest they got to.
Well, there's also context to take in here of. Or maybe subtext is the better word. Where there's a live version of this from like year 2000, where Who are in their 50s, and Pete introduces Marianne and the Shaky Hand by saying, "This one's written in very bad taste," and I'm like, "Oh, it's the sequel to Pictures of Lily."
Yeah,
if you know what I mean. It's about jerking it.
I was about to say, let's give our audiences a second to fill in the blanks themselves, and then you go and fill it in for them.
It's about choking the chicken. About spanking the monkey. Sorry.
You need a timeout.
I know. No, but you would never guess that if you didn't have that context. I was listening to this in middle school, and I'm like, I wonder what she means by her hand is shaky?
Right. And why would the guys come from every city to shake her shaky hand? And it's like, I don't want any traditional girl of who cooks or reads books or sewing or whatever. No, I want this girl.
I want this girl who has shaky hands, and that's all we know about Marianne.
That's all we're gonna say. And
that she's pretty.
The prettiest in the land.
But anyway, it's delivered so tenderly, and the middle instrumental break is so nice with the various percussive instruments. You've got the maracas and stuff that are coming in. It's very pleasant. It's sweet.
I wondered as I was listening to this recently, because I listened to all three of the mixes so I could get a perspective for each of them, and I was wondering if this was in any way, I've never heard Pete talk about this, I wonder if he would even admit to it, if this was kind of his answer to Barbara Ann by the Beach Boys. Because
musically?
Mainly because,
yeah, I guess.
Barbara Ann done by the Beach Boys, I know they didn't write it, but on the Beach Boys Party album, it's done very party-style acoustic guitars, shakers, and a bunch of singers on it. And also in that song, they talk about, I danced with this girl, didn't work. Danced with this girl, didn't work. But I danced with Barbara Ann, it worked. And that's how Marianne was. I danced with Linda, danced with Jean.
Right.
I often wonder if there's some similarities there. And of course, they quite literally covered Barbara Ann like a year or two earlier.
Sure.
Because Keith loves the Beach Boys.
Right. I think this is that, but put through the Who lens of let's make it dirty.
Oh no, definitely no. The Beach Boys would not do anything like this.
No, God.
So no, I've just kind of wondered. Pete's always being influenced by this or that. Just something that I thought about. And one last thing that I'll say, because I mentioned the distinctive mixes. This one, there's a bit at the end of the song that is different in the mixes, and that is quite literally the singer's shake. So if you want to take that into consideration of are they visiting Marianne and she's coming to visit at the end of the song? The stereo mix, not there. Mono mix, it is there. And then in the remixed stereo mix, they make it like the mono mix, and
where it just pans quickly from left to right.
Right.
And in the mono mix, it just kind of there's no real way to describe it. You just have to hear the difference at the last seconds of each track.
Right.
It's the equivalent of trying to speak while someone is beating rhythmically on your back.
Yeah. So that is one of the few differences that I found between the mono and the stereo. But that's definitely one that's very audibly different.
Yeah.
We can move on to the second of the quote-unquote commercial tracks.
Yeah, and the longest and I think best of the commercials on here for Odorono deodorant. And it's the story of a lovely young singer who did her best one night to impress her crush, Mr. Davidson, but at the end of the night, she was done in by her BO.
She should have used Odorono. And then the song's over.
Yeah, it's such a good song, though.
It is. Like, honestly, you wouldn't have got until the end that it's a quote-unquote commercial. It's like the commercials you watch on TV that kind of go on and on. You're like, so what are you selling here? At the very end, they'd be like, BMWs. Oh, that's what you were selling the whole time?
Thanks.
So it's Odorono. It's like, it's a nice song, and then you listen to it, and you kind of almost have to jokingly say, WTF?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. But it's fun. It's pleasant, and Pete's got a good vocal on it.
Yeah. What I love about this is that you would never guess that it's a commercial until the very last minute. If you were listening to the record in the 60s and you weren't paying attention to the label, which is the only place... I have it on vinyl, and the only place that the track list is on the label itself.
Right.
So if you're listening to it and you're not looking at the track list, you go through this song of, Love Lost, at the very last second, it's like, that was a crummy commercial? Son of a bitch.
And then the way it kind of just abruptly ends, and the song doesn't get a chance to, I guess,
It doesn't dwell on the fact that it's a commercial.
Right, so it kind of leaves you just more stricken, kind of like, what the heck did I just listen to?
Yeah.
So I've been kind of dancing around this. So Odorono does have a final chorus that was chopped off of the record.
Yeah.
And I've never heard anyone talk about it. Feel free to correct me. But the way I always thought is like, did they just give the songs to the people mixing it, and someone's like, oh, that's the title of the song, cut the tape, it ends there?
No, I'm sure it was, they listened to the whole thing and went, either it works better without the final bit, or they needed to shorten the side for time.
That's honestly what it most likely is, because
it might have come down to, like, okay, we can have the final part of Odorono, or we can have the premiere drums jingle, for example.
And Keith is like, you're going to keep my drum commercial, dang it.
Yes, and especially like, I got Premier drums because of this, you guys. We can't cut it. So next track is Tattoo, which is probably one of the better known tracks from Sellout.
Yeah,
it's one that stayed in
their set list.
Band's set list forever. I think they were playing it all the way until they stopped touring regularly in the 76 or so.
I'm not saying you're wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised. Often,
I think it was on and off after the 71 tour or so, but yeah.
But no, this is definitely one that stayed in their set list. This is one that, like, I do like this song as a guitar player. When you look at these chords, they shouldn't really go together, but they really work. I like how Roger's vocal on this is very kind of smooth in that storyteller kind of way.
Yeah.
Really painting the picture of why they're getting the tattoo, what the tattoo is, what are the outcomes of it, and all the different emotions that come with having tattoos.
Yeah, and again, it's Roger like at his most tender and sweet and innocent. And in fact, Pete said, "Roger, I don't know if you can pull this one off. I think I might have to sing it." And he's like, "No, you're not. I'm barely on this album."
I can't picture Pete singing Tattoo. I can't.
I know, it's odd. He does have the middle section talking about the long hair bit, but singing the whole thing, I don't see it either. And thankfully, Roger proved him wrong, and Pete must have been like, oh, Roger's growing as a vocalist.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be the last time that Pete was overtaken by Roger's vocals and be like, nope, that guy, he knows what he's doing.
For sure.
No, this one I really like, and this one is kind of one of those songs that I'm not going to classify as a commercial, but
it's not.
No, it's not. But if you want to read into it, it's not telling you like, hey, Joe's Tattoo Parlor, down the street or whatever. It's just tattoos are a commercial thing that you can get, and this is a song about a tattoo, but not a commercial about tattoos.
Right.
So I'm just saying, like, this is one song that it fits the commercial concept, but it's not a commercial song.
Sure.
That's one of the reasons why I also like it.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it like that, but yeah, sure. I like that a lot.
And
I do have to admit though that like I feel like Pete just kind of gave up for the last line.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it ends with. Now I'm older, I'm tattooed all over. My wife has tattooed too. Rudy doo toot, Rudy tooty toot toot, Rudy toodle toodle tattoo too.
To you.
And it's like, what the... Pete, what's going on there?
I don't know, like, I never had a problem with it.
I didn't have a problem with it initially, like when I first heard it, but I just thought more about it. I'm like, you really couldn't think of anything there, could you, Pete?
Yeah.
Which is, it's fine. It's good. It's cute. It gives the song a little more identity, because I don't think Pete ever really did that again, of just having like scat lyrics.
Not that I can think of, but also I kind of like the scat lyrics. If you read into it, it's like, the story's over, I'm tattooed all over, my wife is tattooed all over, we're living our happy tattooed lives, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, I'm probably reading into it, but like, it's fun. I like it.
I don't dislike it either.
I like the song, and the fact... and they like the song because, like, as we mentioned, it's stayed in their set list for quite some time.
Yeah, I gotta say, man, the harmonies on this are gorgeous.
Yes. One thing we haven't talked about, we alluded to in, like, Heinz Baked Beans, but there's a lot of layering in this album. Like, even going back to Marianne with the Shaky Hands, the choruses, it sounds like it's almost a small group of friends, not just 2 or 3 people.
Sure.
So with Tattoo, and it sounds like Pete's double tracking himself, or it's Pete and Roger on the backing vocals.
I know John's in it too.
Or John's in it too. So like, they really, took their time with production, not just with the commercials, but just with the songs themselves. Because the Tattoo vocals are just beautiful.
Right, and major props to Kit Lambert on producing this, and the other engineers involved, because I think the Kit also produced a quick one in Happy Jack, if I'm not mistaken.
You think you're right about that?
Yeah, but like, that was clearly like their first time doing it. With this, they had enough experience going into it that they could really make something special. But and the production would only get better as their albums went on. So the next track
is Our Love Was.
Yeah.
But apparently, depending on where you live, sometimes there's the word is added to it.
Yeah, Our Love Was is in U.S. because somebody at Decca made a mistake.
Yeah, because the word is, Our Love is never really in the song.
No.
I mean, it's kind of like the Circle's Instant Party debacle a few years earlier.
A little bit, yeah.
But no, it's called Our Love Was. And this is one that... Again, kind of alluding to, like, this is a song that sounds like this kind of song. This sounds like a song kind of like, almost like So Sad About Us, looking back on a relationship that has ended, and looking at the bits that were really good. Like, it was flying, soaring, shining.
Yeah.
And honestly, I kind of take that for what it is. Like, there's something about the song that I kind of actively dislike or anything. It's like, it's another of these quote-unquote love songs from The Who.
Yeah, there's a lot more like boy-girl love on this album than most Who albums, I think. Of their originals, anyway, because they did plenty of covers of, love songs, and that's fine. I don't know, something about Our Love Was really stayed with me for a long time, and I don't want to say it's like diminished, but it hasn't become as important for me as a song recent years. But initially, God, this was one of my favorite songs by The Who at all. And I think a lot of that has to do with the sound of it, with like the riff of the very like singular notes that come out of Pete's guitar. The guitar solo is wacky and weird and strange. The stereo one. Anyway.
Yes, I was going to get to that, but might as well hit on it now. So.
Yeah, there's 2 different guitar solos depending on the mix you listen to.
Right.
The stereo one is much better.
There's a stereo guitar solo. The mono one is a bit more... I don't want to say flowery, but people have called it a Hawaiian theme solo.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sure, we'll go with that.
Yeah.
And then on the remix, it uses the stereo guitar solo, but the original solo on the original mix is kind of faded up. On the remix, they were like, hey, we found the notes, so we'll turn it up. So I'm not going to say it's 3 distinctive guitar solos, it's 2 distinctive guitar solos, and 2 of them have different mixes.
Yeah.
So, there's different solos, but yeah.
This was back in '67 when they had 2 different mixes for every album, and then, like, going forward, they're like, we're just going to do stereo now.
Yeah. This was right at the cusp when artists, as much as I know, artists were aware that people were buying stereo and mono separately.
Yes.
So they thought, let's have distinctive mixes to make people buy both. That is 100% what Paul McCartney said for mixing the White Album in mono and stereo. Because we're going to sell more copies.
Yeah.
And with the Who sell out,
it's the old Pokemon Red and Blue approach.
I know, right? So this is one of the definitely like audible differences. But stick with the stereo and you'll be totally fine.
For sure.
And
didn't they cut off the first note, you said, or was it a different song?
For the stereo?
For one of the mixes.
Well, for one of the mixes, I mean, they cut off the first note of the guitar solo. It just fades up.
Oh, just the solo?
Yeah. You know,
okay, yeah.
Remix, it's bam, dan, dan, dan. The remix stereo.
I know what you mean.
They put that note back in there. And one of the bonus tracks I'll touch on towards the end is a different mix of this, and I have a theory as to why that first note was faded in.
Okay.
So I'll definitely get to that. And that's kind of really all I have to say about Our Love Was.
I do know one other thing about it. It's kind of. I don't remember which came first in this chicken or egg scenario, but it is related directly to the Beatles' Dear Prudence. You talked about the White Album.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, one or the other of them took inspiration from the other.
Well, this album was released in '67. White Album is '68.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Pete had heard a Dear Prudence demo at some point and taken the riff and spun it into Our Love Was, but or maybe it was Lennon who took the inspiration.
I never thought
from
about
this.
the dun 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 dun. Yeah, you're right. That's really cool.
Yeah, same timing of it, different notes, but probably a different key.
Oh,
almost certainly.
And one last thing I'll say, Garrett and I talked about this. So this song was performed, quote unquote, live on the BBC.
Yeah.
Because right at this time, the Who were getting away with, we can't be at the studio all the time to lay down BBC tracks. So either we'll record from the studio, like unique versions, or screw it, here's the record.
Yeah.
And Our Love Was played on the BBC, but it's just straight up it would have been the mono mix, because BBC was strictly mono at the time.
Yes.
So it's not on their BBC session CD, because that would be redundant.
Yeah.
But if you find some quality bootlegs, you'll find Our Love Was. But don't be so happy to think, oh, it's alive, because it's not.
Yeah, they never really played it live, I don't think.
No.
And if they did, it's probably in bootleg quality.
Yeah. No, that's really all I got really on Our Love Was.
Yeah, it's a good song.
But then we lead into what closes side one.
Well,
of
yes,
the album.
by way of the Roto Sound Strings jingle,
Yes.
We hit the big one. I Can See for Miles ends out the first side.
Yes.
And oh boy.
What a side closer.
Oh man. This song, like, I read somewhere that from a professional music critic, I think, said if I had 3 to 4 minutes to tell alien creatures what exactly rock and roll was, I would play them this song.
That's a bold choice.
I know, right?
I mean, it's not a bad choice, but it's also, and I say this with kind words to the Who, it's a dangerous choice.
Yeah.
This is a dangerous sounding song.
Oh, yeah.
And you just gotta love it, because this is straight up jealousy and straight up, like, I know
Vengeance.
Yeah. Like, you don't know about me and what I can do, and it's so
possibly supernatural powers.
I know. So it's so great, and this is, especially with production, you've got like double guitars. You've got on the stereo mix, the guitar goes speaker to speaker for the solo. Just like. This guy's like, I'm over here, and I'm over here, I'm over here, I'm over here.
Got one of the coolest drum tracks I've ever heard, because there's nothing like metronomic or regular about it. It's all accents.
It's all accents.
And rolls, because Keith Moon was a f***ing madman, and I loved him. And how this is a great example of Keith playing to the vocal,
right?
Which is what Roger said made him such a great drummer, was the fact that he played not only to the song, but he played to the most important parts of the song, and the most impactful lyrics and vocals, and just his timing as far as this accent should go here was unmatched.
And even if you want to take it one step further, even the guitar, like the second guitar, the one that's doing the fills in between the lines, the ones that accentuate certain lines are just so biting, just like, or just
oh yeah.
It's like, watch out for Roger, who sounds like a monster.
Dude, yeah, he sounds like he's about to and kill somebody, and I love it. Right.
I remember, you're going to think I'm kind of nuts for remembering this, but like years ago when we started Triple Threat and we were talking about songs that got us into these bands, you would mention I Can See Your Miles, and you described this song as a snake.
Yes.
And I'll never forget that, because I'm like, it's slithering, it's venomous.
Uh-huh.
And also like the way that it kind of stays on an E chord for a good majority of the song. It's just like, it's like slithering. Dun, 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 dun,
yeah,
dun.
very Jaws a little bit.
It's just like, it's so, that I love this song, and I even remember we did our Who bracket. This was up against My Generation, and My Generation won. And
we had to Old Yeller Can't See for Miles.
I would have given the slight I Can't See for Miles, but then I thought about it. Well, I Can See for Miles wouldn't exist if My Generation didn't exist.
Of course.
But because I Can See for Miles, it just like, you know what I mentioned earlier, like there was always going one step forward.
Yeah.
This is the most dangerous song they've done, and besides a quick one, this is probably the longest one they had done so far. It's barely over 4 minutes.
Yeah, it's definitely on the longer side as far as tracks on this album. It's not the longest though.
No.
But yeah, just great parts from everyone. We didn't even mention, Pete's guitar solo on this. He was taking a heavy influence from Jimi Hendrix at this point.
Oh, yeah, and you can hear it.
Yeah, mostly in stuff like the tones that he was picking out and the way that he would play power chords, but also Pete was looking heavily into Jimmy's jazz influences and one-note solos.
Mm-hmm.
The solos on I Can See for Miles are all iterations on a single note.
Right.
Which is, an odd thing to do, but a distinctive thing to do. There's no solo like the one Pete did in I Can See for Miles, and I love that.
Right. And the way it's mixed on the stereo mix, going from speaker to speaker. On the remix stereo, it's all just in one speaker, and to me it doesn't have the same effect. It's got a same power, but I like it going speaker to speaker.
Sure.
Even if it is just, one singular note. And also it kind of matches the song, because a lot of the song is on that E chord with a couple of changes. So to me it really fits, and it's just a great song, great power, all the while, no pun intended. And it didn't do as well as Pete thought it would.
I know. It's incredible that this song that was so innovative and so different and so cool didn't sell. They were selling fewer copies than freaking Engelbert Humperdinck. And Pete saw this later and was like, I don't get it. I don't understand it. We spent so much time and money on this song because it was mixed and recorded in like 3 different places across 2 different continents. And at the end it just didn't do anything in the charts. And
his great quote was...
his great quote was when someone pointed out, well, maybe it's just not what the British record buyer wanted at that time. So I spit on the British record buyer.
Yeah. And, I'm not saying he's not wrong, but, you have to give the single a chance, because this was the highest they ever got in the U.S. charts, not UK. The U.S. charts. This went up to number 9, giving them their only top 10 hit. Before this, they had Happy Jack hit number 24. Yeah. Number 9 is
that's nothing to sneeze at, but come on.
No, that's a big step from 24.
Yeah.
And I have a couple of reasons why I think I Can See for Miles didn't sell. And there are things that you can point to and be like, yeah, but and of course the biggest one is you can't play it live.
Yeah, they did a few times in the 60s, but it was so tough they just didn't bother doing it.
And every time there was a public televised performance, take the Smothers Brothers for instance.
They would mime that.
They would mime it, and also, what else happened on the Smothers Brothers?
No, that was with My Generation.
Exactly. Everyone's gonna talk about that and not the other song.
The one where bass drum blew up in Pete's face.
Right. So it's like everyone's gonna remember the Smothers Brothers for that, and not that was a great performance of I Can See for Miles.
I've seen that performance, and it's a mime thing, and they're like, whoa, look at all the colors, But yeah, on the other hand, man, this is such a good song.
It's such a good song.
And we didn't even talk about the U.S. single mix has a different mixing for John's bass,
right? Yes.
Which is super understated as far as John's bass playing goes in most mixes. But when you hit the U.S. single one, it feels like it blows out your subwoofers as it enters.
Yeah.
Because it just, it starts with the initial guitar riff, and you're like, oh, this is interesting, and then boom, it's just like, oh,
Yeah.
Why is the floor shaking?
No, it's so great. And then when they played it on the BBC, John kind of outright just kind of redoes his bass parts with like different strings, so you can hear almost a twang sound, like dun dun dun. So like
that's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. And of course that was also a way for them to get away with like, oh, it's not the record because the bass part is different.
But like, also John was a notorious perfectionist who was constantly tinkering with things.
Oh God, yes. Like, who would think any of the footage in The Kids Are Alright would even exist if John's like, you can use it, but I'm going back and redubbing my bass parts.
Fine, John, fine.
The Who fans want to see this footage, so it's like, as much as we can rag on John for being perfectionist, at least we got some of these things.
Yeah.
So I can see from Miles, it's a great closer. Pete, I'm sorry it didn't sell, but in hindsight, everyone loves it.
Yeah. They've been playing it in recent years too, and it sounds really good.
Yes.
With Zach on drums and usually Pino on bass.
Yeah, I do like how they've definitely stripped away from, as you lovingly called, Who on Ice.
Yeah, with, a little bit.
With keyboards and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's like not bad versions, but what they're doing now, it's like, now we're talking.
Oh yeah.
It's just so good.
So then after a brief commercial interlude with the Charles Atlas exercise course.
Right, which starts side 2.
Yeah.
But on the remix CD, just fades into it because...
It's a CD.
Yeah, if they had CDs in 67, they totally would have done that.
Right. We say that it's a concept album that's, structured like a pirate radio show, but the original record only really did that on side 1.
Yes, we're going to get to side 2, has this and maybe a few others, and then that concept kind of dies down.
Yeah.
But yeah, they have the Charles Atlas commercial.
And then I Can't Reach You. Which is another one of my favorites. I feel like it's definitely the cousin of Our Love Was.
Yeah.
These longing love song sort of things.
Yeah, this one, honestly, I have the same feeling about Our Love Was. It's like, it's nice, it's pleasant.
Yeah.
There's not much for me to grab onto. It's like, it's got a nice hook. The lyrics fit in nicely with the rhythm.
Sure.
Pete's got nice harmonies with himself. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like solid track.
Yeah. This was another one that I heavily loved earlier on. Like I said, it's basically Our Love Was through a distorted mirror, and I don't know. There's something about it that hits a little differently though, because I think I was relating it to a crush that I had at the time.
Oh, okay.
You get a lot of enjoyment out of songs that speak to you very directly.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's a really good one. I feel like there's not too much to say about it. But
not really.
Just go listen to it. It's pretty.
Yeah. I don't know if it was like the best choice to start off side 2, but then again, I remember side 2 doesn't technically start with this song. It starts with the Charles Atlas jingle. So by the time you get to I Can't Reach You, it's kind of like just moving the record along.
Yeah, just keeping it coming.
Right.
All the good jams. Mm-hmm. So speaking of jams,
yeah.
So Medak is next.
If that's what you should go by, because that's what it is called.
That is true. The U.S. version, they for some reason retitled it Spotted Henry,
and it's not even listed as a separate track. It's like I Can't Reach You / Spotted Henry.
Yeah, that's right.
But anyway,
yeah.
Yes.
Medak, it's the commercial about pimple cream, written this time by John and performed mostly by him on lead vocal. Mm-hmm. And it's goofy. It's stupid. I love it.
Yeah. No, this is definitely like...
This is probably one of the weaker commercials, I think.
Yeah, only in the sense that like you get right away that it is a commercial song, mm-hmm. and it's over a minute, and usually a commercial song would be less than that.
Sure.
Or even in Odorono, it's 2.5 minutes, and you don't know it's a commercial until the very end of it.
Yeah.
Medak is straight up like... Henry had acne, and so
Henry had acne, so he tried a bunch of creams until he found the right one.
Right. Now this one is it's fun, but there's not to read into as like a song.
Yeah.
It does remind me how on the next album, Tommy, there are parts of the story where Pete was like, I can't write this, Cousin Kevin or Uncle Ernie, so John came in and stepped in. So this kind of feels like essentially like Pete's writing Odorono, and it's like, hey John, why don't you step in and try something?
Yep.
That's the kind of vibe with this one, with this song. Like it's like the song title, Medak, parentheses, it's John's turn to help now.
Basically. Yeah. And also, this might just be me, but I feel like the mixing on this one is subpar.
It does feel...
It sounds a little muddy.
You're not wrong to say that the mixing is a little... could be better on this one.
Yeah, yeah.
So I guess that really is all we have to say about Medak.
Yeah, Medak, it's fun. It's stupid.
Fun.
It's so much. A lot of this album is like... This, I think, is one of the best guilty pleasure albums out there. Mm-hmm. One that you could say, like, I like this one a lot. And people are like, I see why you say that, but yeah, it's pretty dumb.
It is pretty dumb. Yeah. The only thing, I guess, to say about Medak in general, not just the song, is that we did... there's a cool picture of the Australian cover.
Right.
Replaces... Keith's picture, Medak with I think
a tube of Clearasil.
Clearasil, thank you, that's what it was called, which was what the Medak equivalent in Australia was. This is kind of unfortunate for them that there's no Clearasil song on here. Yeah. But anyway, they got the commercial tie and it's all good.
Yeah. So then the next track is Relax.
Yes. This is what I was getting at earlier.
I thought so. I was going to say the same thing too, that this is the most psychedelic Who original.
Yes, Arminius' guy is the psychedelic non-Who original. This is the psychedelic Who original.
Yeah.
It's just... I don't mean to put this down when I say it's pretty generic.
No, I like it a lot.
No, I didn't say I didn't like it. I'm just saying it sounds like I'm going to put it down when I say it sounds generic.
I know what you mean. I kind of know what you mean with it, and that it sounds like other things, but at the time, because it is very much let's drop in, man.
Yeah,
let's chill out.
And even the way they sing, "Open up your mind."
Yeah, I really like the harmonies on this and the organ part that comes. Is that Al Cooper? No, he's only on
Rael
and the other version of Marianne.
No, I would not be surprised if it's Pete because the organ part is pretty simple. Al Cooper's a better technical organ player,
right? And at this time, Pete was just learning keyboards. This is the first one that has him on piano and probably organ here. Yeah,
you can hear a group like demo in one of the bonus tracks where that's Pete on piano. Mm-hmm. So no, this is very much like the Who's take on psychedelic. You just, to quote the Beatles again, turn off your mind and float downstream.
Yeah, a little bit. Tune in, turn off, drop in, drop out.
And then this one did stay in their set list. Not terribly long.
No, but I'm glad that there's a live version of this because it's really cool.
And it's over 11 minutes long.
Right, because they just, after they get the initial part of the song, they're like, let's just jam. Let's just jam for like 5 minutes.
And since the song is quote-unquote generic, it can lend itself to jamming and just... It can only go up from there.
Yeah. I do want to say something what someone pointed out to me a little while back, something that I thought was really cool, was that it's possible that this song was influenced by Syd Barrett's Pink Floyd at the time. And I think that organ part does sound pretty Farfisa-ish. Maybe, and just listening to that with that kind of context in my mind makes me think, this is a little cooler than I thought it was.
I mean, now that you say that, I wouldn't have thought of that, but if the person who made that comment wants to go with that, I'll go with it too.
Yeah.
The way that it kind of breaks down and you really hear the organ, even if it's just single chords, sounds almost Floyd-y-ish now that I think about it. So.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for blowing my mind, I guess.
You bet. Then the remix CD has a quick interlude of an alternate version of the Rotosound strings jingle, which is just Keith and John going old groups together with Rotosound strings.
Just to get one more jingle in to side two before we
just stop doing jingles. Really, yeah. Goes right into Silas Stingy.
Yes.
What do you think of Silas Stingy, Tom?
Not strong opinion. Like it's fine. It's a John song.
Yeah.
And I know John's got that sense of humor, writing songs about things that you wouldn't normally write songs about.
Yeah.
So for me to just say like it sounds like a John song, you know me, I love John.
Yeah. I have the stupidest weakness for John Entwistle. Like, I say stupid, but like, I don't know. I'm a John stan for sure because I don't know. There's something about the way that he approached things, whether it was his sense of humor or just the way that he would write things on a bass guitar as opposed to a piano or an acoustic guitar, that really lends itself to a lot of very strange but also really catchy songs that he would make.
Yeah.
And Silas Stingy is one of his best, I think. Especially in this earlier period when he tended to put a lot more humor into his songs. Where it's this kind of this fable of Silas Stingy, the miser, who was so greedy that he decided to spend all of his money on things to protect his money.
Yeah.
And he realized at the end of his shopping spree that he didn't have any more money.
Right. Like,
and it has a sort of nursery rhyme aspect to it with the chorus.
Yeah, but by the time you're done with the song, you're probably singing "Money, Money, Money" right along with them.
Money, money, money bags. Yeah, it's great. It'll get stuck in your head. This is one of the songs of all time that gets stuck in my head the most.
Yeah. Is that Roger singing with him?
Yeah, Roger and John are singing together in most of this.
Because this reminded me of a Success Story, which was years later, where it's like they're both sharing vocals, so I couldn't tell if there is a lead singer or not.
Right.
On Success Story, it's very clearly like there are two vocalists, and it's both of them. And for this one, I'm getting the same vibe, and both of them happen to be written by John.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Roger and John is a co-lead that didn't come out often enough, I feel.
Not really. Like, even a few years later on Live at Leeds, they're doing Cousin Kevin together.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like Success Story.
No, not Cousin Kevin.
What is it? Oh, Fiddle About. My bad.
Yes.
When they're doing Fiddle About, you got like the live Fiddle About, Silas Stingy, and Success Story. Maybe a few others that I can't think of, but it's kind of like, that's kind of it. That's a combo that just didn't last that long. But they sound great together. I can only imagine Roger's reaction when John brings this in. He's like, all right, let's do this. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Wait, especially if John comes in like, so I wrote too many words for one breath.
Yeah.
And Roger's like, I'll just come in. I'll be your wingman on that one.
Right.
Yeah, it's great. I love Silas.
One last thing I'll say about it is that it does make me appreciate that John is just getting better as a writer.
Yeah.
Because he hadn't written what most Who or fans or rock fans would say. He hadn't written some of his best stuff yet.
No. I mean, he did have Boris, which would always be one of his best songs because it was so simple and fun.
And requested.
Yes. But, his other stuff at the time was, Whiskey Man and The Ox.
Right.
Which, they're probably not the most thrilling things to see live or not even not to see, but to play.
Right. So in hindsight,
this album shows John growing as a songwriter a lot.
Right. So in hindsight, look at Silas Stingy as like a good song, and then also a good step forward into what he is going to be doing. And even a song like My Wife, which some people would put money down. That's his best song.
Sure.
It's still done tongue in cheek with a lot of humor.
Exactly.
And that's who John is. So like for this one, I haven't said anything bad about it. It's like it's John doing his thing, and he would only get better from here.
Yeah. In fact, he would improve on Silas Stingy to make Fiddle About. You look at the structures of each song and the chord choices and everything. They're pretty much the same. Yeah,
now that you point it out, I'm kind of seeing that too.
But I only noticed that when someone pointed it out to me again. That, actually Silas Stingy is basically a demo of Fiddle About. And I'm like, oh!
Yeah.
Oh, cool! I do think Fiddle About is an improvement.
I mean, it's also, you probably wouldn't have guessed that the closing notes of Our Love Was would become doom, 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 until someone points it out and you're like, well, now I can't unhear that.
Oh,
so now every time Our Love Was ends, I'm like, and there's the future right there that would come up in Tommy, and that's not the last time you'll hear it on this album either.
Yeah. So then after Silas Stingy, we go into Sunrise.
One of Pete's earliest songs that he claims he's ever written, along with It Was You, which is The Who's first ever recordings, not officially released. But this song's been around for a long time, and when you listen to it, and especially as a guitar player, you read the music, I'm kind of like, if this was one of the first things ever written, then damn, dude.
Yeah.
Because these chords are nothing to sneeze at.
No, yeah. Sunrise is interesting because it's just Pete on the guitar the entire way through, and it's gorgeous. This lovely Baroque guitar piece with also, again, hints of the future, and the riff in the middle being very Pinball Wizard.
Yes.
But at the same time, like, the context is entirely different. The tone and mood are entirely different. It's fascinating to hear the journey that Pete was going on, which is so evident in this album somehow. And we'll even get into that a little later as well. But it's great. Very sweet, very longing, very yearning. There's not really too much to say about Sunrise because you just got to hear it. It's gorgeous. He said it was he recorded it for his mother when she complained that the Who never made real music.
Dang it, Mom.
Yeah. And so he said, okay, here's this. And I think she really enjoyed it, actually, when he played it for her.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely beautiful. One of the things I was going to say about it is that you mentioned the Pinball Wizard-like riff. Even if you break it down, he's playing that note over the different chord changes that just stays dun 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 dun, kind of like the opening to Pinball Wizard. You have the chords that change, but there's one note that stays throughout all of the chord changes. Same thing with Sunrise. So in a way, Sunrise to me is like almost peering into the future of a genius man, and it's even made more genius that this was one of the first things that he ever did. So talk about, spreading your wings as soon as you learned how to walk.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's just great, and there's not much else you can really say about it, and just beautiful delivery, beautiful execution, and I applaud Pete because I think anyone would give that to be the second song they ever write.
Sure, right.
Whatever this was.
In the first 5, one of those, yeah.
Yeah, there's demos. There's a demo of this on the My Generation Super Deluxe Edition, and then
that's right,
one that he would return to, all these years later. So definitely a beautiful highlight on side 2, but not the end of side 2.
No, the end of side 2 comes with Rael in 2 parts, and wow, I love Rael.
Yeah.
I know I keep saying, like, oh, I love this song. I know. There's a lot to like on this album.
Well, sometimes it's hard to say anything else than just, I love it!
Yeah. Rael is dope. It's interesting because it's another one of those very obvious bridges from early Who to mid-period Who.
Yes.
Because it has the riff from Sparks and Tommy in it.
The whole second half.
Yeah.
Or last third, or whatever.
Or so, yeah.
It's there.
Yeah, Rael is almost 6 minutes long, and half of that is the Sparks riff. And it's really cool, because it's another one of those that Pete's like, I'm going to experiment more with telling stories in music, like overtly doing operatic things. And in that way, it feels kind of like the midpoint between something like a quick one, where it's a longer song that has multiple movements and different styles, and a full-on orchestral work like Tommy.
Right.
I say orchestral. I meant operatic, including the riff that would become Sparks. And it's fascinating because the story is weird as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna be blunt. I don't think I can even follow this story.
It's basically that the homeland of Rael, which might be a nod to Israel.
Yeah, I always wondered, was Rael the name of the country? Because it's like Rael, the home of my religion.
Yes. The homeland is being invaded by the Red Chins, which in this is communist China. Pete, it never says in the song, but Pete tells the story of China invading Israel in 1999. And this sea captain is terrified of this war and has to make a decision: am I going to stay and fight the war in my yacht, or whatever? Yeah, he says yacht. So he says, all right, captain of the army or of the navy, I'm gonna put up a flag on Christmas so you can know whether I'm going to stay or go. And of course, he puts up the yellow flag to say that he's going to leave.
Yeah.
So don't look for me. I'm running away. It's a strange story of like there's this military invasion and the crucial decision, and he just chickens out.
The way that you described that story, imagine you pitching that to someone who never heard Ray Ellis' song, and then you just cap it off by saying, "Oh, and by the way, they made a song about that."
Yeah.
It's like, what the heck? That sounds like it should be a novel, not a 6-minute song.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, we should mention that this song, it's a demo. It's not officially released. Was 8.5 minutes long, and it's titled Real (parentheses parts 1 through 9).
Yes. Pete had many.
Oh my gosh!
Had big ambitions for Real.
Big ambitions.
Had to cut him off.
It's like he did a quick one, and he just got a kick in the pants to do something just as long.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying that it's like, oh my God, Pete, stop. It's just like, oh.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can make it work, then that's great.
Again, that could have been something like. That it's another clue, I think, as to the double album that Who Sell Out could have been.
Right.
Because at one point he could have just taken half to an entire side to just do Rail, while the other 3 sides were for these commercials and other songs.
Right.
So I'm really curious as to what a finalized, expanded version of Rail would look like and sound like, but we're never gonna get it.
We're never gonna get it. I mean, the only thing we're gonna get is the Real Coda, also known as Real Naive.
Yes.
Where it's like it's this kind of like organ, almost epilogue.
Yeah.
Because it's sung by Pete. The whole song, we should say, it's sung by Roger, and then Pete kind of does the epilogue.
Right.
But of course, the epilogue didn't make it on the album.
Yeah. It cuts off with the captain fleeing, and
yeah.
All right, cool. But yeah, I really like all the released parts of Rail. We should mention also that Rail has several differences in mixing too, mostly because it was damaged while they were recording it in the studio.
Yes.
Someone threw it away and threw hot cigarette ash on it. And cut off the first minute or so.
Right. So as a result, the second verse, which you can find on the remixed version and on the 30 Years box set, it starts with the words, "The country of my father."
Yeah.
That was all very damaged, and they had to work around it.
Right. And so the solution they came up with was just cut that section out and just fade in the next line, and it's very clumsy if you listen to the finalized versions from the original mixes. I much prefer the remix that they made in the 90s that incorporates a different version for the first 30 seconds or so.
Yeah,
of the song.
The mixing is a little bit different for the first.
Yeah, they used the mono version for the first 30 seconds and then sweep in with the stereo to pick up, so it doesn't abruptly change like it does in the original mixes.
Right. Even the original stereo mix, the first, I would say, 20 seconds or so are kind of like the mono mix, and as soon as Rael gets in, it just switches to full-on stereo.
Yeah.
And honestly, I kind of love that the original mixes, only because I'm laughing like there should be something there, but there's not.
Yeah.
I know it wasn't their fault, but
Right.
it's kind of hilarious. And if you have the sheet music, that whole measure of the end of the first verse right into Rael, that measure switches to 9/8 meter in order to make that work on paper. And it's hilarious to look at.
No.
It's like,
just stick with the remade version.
Right. No, it's hilarious, and the Who even tried to remake the damn song.
They put in all this effort to just redo the whole thing, but the vibe was wrong, the energy wasn't there, the mixing was off, and they said, just screw it, we'll go with what we can salvage out of this accident.
Right.
And of course you will hear the story of Pete being so upset that he threw a chair through a window on learning about the damaged Rael tape, but that's not true.
Oh, is it?
It's not.
I read that. I was so happy to read that. I was like, that's a great story that we're going to share on the show.
I wish it were true, but it's one of those rock and roll legends that doesn't really exist.
Oh, well, anyway. No, I don't mind Rael as a closer, but I have to be honest, it is a bit of an underwhelming closer for me personally, for a few reasons. Because listening to it, even with the damaged original mix, it does feel like something is missing. Like the song, like when you say like the captain flees, it's like, yeah, that's the end of the story. It's like
it's an unsatisfying end.
It's unsatisfying for me. I'm kind of like, well, I would like some resolution. What happens to the war? Who wins? And it
probably China.
It probably, I mean, it doesn't matter. And especially also knowing what I know now, this record leading to Tommy, I can't help but looking at the second half or last third of the song, whatever you want to call it, as just nothing more of like, well, after this album, I'm going to go listen to Tommy now.
Yeah, it does have a little bit of that. It's like, this is just Sparks, but not as good.
Right, which is an unfair thing for me to say, because in 1967, Sparks didn't exist.
Right.
So hearing this in 67, I would have been like, oh, what a closer. I can't wait to see what they do next.
Yeah.
But hearing this in hindsight, I'm like, well, I know what they did next, and what they did next was just more complete than Real. So Real is not a bad closer, but for me, it's a little underwhelming.
Yeah, I do want to say though that the version of the Sparks riff that's in here, it's not like they just lifted it and put it on Tommy. They re-recorded it, but it's fascinating to hear like the production decisions they made with it, like the super reverb clapper, or whatever sound that is that comes between in the pauses in the riff. Yeah.
Yeah, on Tommy, they replaced it with like a tambourine or a snare drum or something that's not a reverbed clap.
Or timpani. Depends on which version you're listening to, the overture, the underture, or Sparks.
No, putting a reverb clap in Tommy would have almost thrown it off a little bit.
It's clear that they were still experimenting with things, and I think that's a cool sound, but like they definitely perfected what they wanted out of this piece of music in the next album.
And I've never heard Pete talk about this. Maybe you have, and again, feel free to correct me, why he did that. The only thing I can think of is because Real was so unsatisfying to him as a composer, musician, producer, that I'd be like, well, I had this great musical idea, wasn't executed 100% what I would have liked, so, reuse it.
Sure. Yeah, I think it is something like that, and also combining that with the fact that Who Sell Out didn't sell great.
No, it didn't. We were looking on the chart listing. In the UK, I think it barely cracked the top 10.
Sure.
And in the US, it was all the way at 48.
Yeah.
Not even top 40 status.
Right. So it's probably one of those things like, probably not. No one's going to notice if they didn't have an internet. No one's going to notice if I'm going to just take this riff and slap it into the next album, because we needed to do it better anyway.
Right. But
when you have a song on an album that underperforms, and that song was even damaged in transit, it's like, screw it, I want to do it again. No one's going to stop me.
Exactly.
Especially with that killer riff. That it's just like, I'm going to make it right.
Right.
And I'm glad they did, because Sparks is one of the best riffs in rock. Fight me.
No, it's great. It's great. It should not go unmentioned that even though the album didn't chart well or didn't sell well, that it definitely has gotten a reputation over the years.
Yeah, and surprisingly, to me anyway, it's often regarded as like the best Who album. Like, slow your roll there, buddy. But I get where you're coming from.
There was even a special that was on YouTube, but it was like one of the specials that you had to pay for, so I didn't watch it. And they had I did watch the trailer for it, and Pete's interviewed, Roger's interviewed, and Richard Barnes is interviewed. Yeah. Pete's longtime friend, longtime Who fan, and he outright says something in the trailer like the Who Sell Out is like the greatest concept album of all time. And I'm kind of like, Richard Barnes, I know you love the band and all.
It's like, Barney. The next one is Tommy, dude.
Yeah.
And then Quadrophenia is later on. You can't say that.
I know you love the band and all, but how much they pay you to say that? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
No.
It's just like, but it's definitely got a reputation, especially with the building blocks that it led to later.
And yet, I feel that there's a huge gap between where they were in making A Quick One or Happy Jack and Who Sell Out. And a lot of that is that they were recording a ton.
Yes.
They were super prolific at this point, but not much of it got to see the light of day.
Right.
There was a whole album between A Quick One and Sell Out that just didn't really get released. They called it Jigsaw for a while.
Yes.
Before, spinning a few of the tracks off into singles. Some of them were kept and later released as singles and after Who Sell Out, because they were also working on another album in 1968 before Tommy became the focus. They were going to call it Who's for Tennis.
Yes, and it even got as far as having artwork done.
I believe so.
For the front cover. No back cover track listing has ever been officially released. The only acknowledgement was that I believe they said Glow Girl would have been the album opener.
Yeah.
And even Glow Girl is a track that's like, it's got shades of what's to come.
Yeah, it straight up has the line, it's a girl, Mrs. Walker, which would change into it's a boy on Tommy.
Right.
Again, it's like, what could have been? What could have been?
Yeah. That whole section of the Who's history,
66 to 68, is fascinating because they put out so much music. I say put out. They made so much music they didn't put out.
Right. And it's also kind of funny for me because this period is like the period of like what projects actually got released. Because you mentioned Jigsaw. Before that, there was the idea of quads. That didn't happen.
That's true, yeah.
We already mentioned Who's for Tennis. There was even talk of John doing a children's album or a children's EP with Boris the Spider and Silas Stingy.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
That was probably where Jekyll and Hyde would have gone.
Jekyll and Hyde would have fallen into it as well.
Yeah.
There was also maybe a talk about them doing covers in the Hall of the Mountain King, Shaken All Over.
No, that's... In the Hall of the Mountain King would have gone on an EP they would have made that would have been just instrumentals.
Okay, then that's it.
That would also have included the outtakes Sodding About, which is fabulous.
Right.
We're just kind of talking about bonus tracks now.
Right. So but the point I was trying to make is like this period is kind of hilarious because it's like this is the only thing that actually got released aside from a couple singles. So that whole period is the idea of all these great ideas of things started and just never ever finished. And we will never know what the track listing would have been or what...
Well, you say never. On the newest re-release of Who Sell Out, they do have a sort of loose track listing of what an album like Who's for Tennis would have looked like.
Right.
Which...
They call it, on the box set, they call it 1968, The Road to Tommy.
Yeah, and it's got Glow Girl, Faith in Something Bigger, Jekyll and Hyde, Call Me Lightning, Little Billy, Dogs, Melancholia, Fortune Teller, Facts of Life, and Magic Bus.
Yes.
Solid collection of songs. I think would have made for a pretty decent album, but I don't think would have been as strong as Who Sell Out. No, not nearly as Tommy.
Looking at some of these songs, some of them just aren't the Who's best work.
Sure.
Like I can tolerate Faith in Something Bigger, but it's not a great song. It sounds like they're trying to write an anthem.
A little bit.
But
at the same time, that's one of the first ones that Pete is actually songwriting about faith.
Yes, and I'll give him credit there.
It's clearly a step in some direction for him that he would explode in doing faith-based lyrics and stuff like Tommy and like some of the stuff that he would bring into the rest of his career.
Right. So now that we've moved on to bonus tracks, besides you talking about the original album, since the Super Deluxe Edition pretty much encompasses everything that they did, and we can't talk about all of them, we figured we would go through them and talk about not just our favorites, but what are some things to look forward to if you're curious about the box or want to expand on this this period. Right. So I think kind of just to kind of give it a good starting point would be some of the songs we did mention did come out the next year in 68 as singles, including songs like Someone's Coming, which I think I say to say is one of both of our favorites.
Well, yeah, Someone's Coming is the B-side of I Can See for Miles in some releases.
Right.
Other releases, it was the electric version of Marianne.
Right. So I want to include that one because it's straight up from this area, from this era.
Someone's Coming is beautiful.
Oh, it's
weird because that's a John song.
Right.
It is the most un-John song, I think, of this period.
A little bit. I mean, I do like John's approach of teenage rebellion and sneaking out, and you'll say you'll take the dog out, then you meet with Tear. To me, it's kind of like John's like, "Hey, John, you're a naughty boy."
Yeah, a little bit.
So it's for me, it's like you can say it's un-John. I'm like, yeah, it still is. It just doesn't make it John enough because he doesn't sing it. Roger's the singer.
Yeah, this is the first time that Roger ever sang one of John's songs. Puts in a great performance for sure.
Great vocal.
And it's got a lovely brass part from John. Everything about Someone's Coming is so pleasant, so sweet. You would never guess it's the guy who would go on to write, something like The Quiet One or, anything.
Or even My Wife, a song about cheating. And this is a song about, trying to meet your girl, but someone's coming. A Jaguar, which...
Yeah, Jaguar is fun.
It's fun. I don't have anything else
Keith was pulling really hard for Jaguar to make it on to Sell Out, but Pete and Kit put the foot down and said, no, Keith, we gotta have Sunrise on it. And Keith was like, but I want a car!
Yeah. Jaguar even got as far as getting a mono mix
in
1967. It made the semifinals going to be on the album.
It seems like they wanted to at least put it out as a single or a B-side or something.
It would have made a cool B-side, not an A-side, though.
No, I don't think so.
And also Early Morning Cold Taxi got got a 1967 mono mix.
I have a complicated relationship with Early Morning Cold Taxi.
Do you now?
Yeah, because I adore this song, and this is...
It's fun. I love this song.
Yeah. And it was interesting to read about Pete's reaction to it.
That's right. Pete goes on about it in his book, and he didn't even write it.
Yeah, because it was actually presented to the band by Roger as something he'd written. And
I know where you're going.
Yeah. They go through the song a bit, and Pete is like, this is really good.
It is a good song.
It might not be, our A-tier material, but this is solid.
Right.
And
what a step up from See My Way, Roger.
Yeah, exactly. And Pete was going like, geez, this could really take a load off my shoulders as being the primary songwriter of The Who, and
if you're contributing songs this good,
and heck, we could do more collaboration. The only collaboration between the two of them in The Who's catalog is Anyway, Anyhow, Anywhere,
right?
And it's minimal, because Roger was like, I want to change a few words in this section, and Pete's like, okay.
Songwriting credit, there you go. But anyway.
But Roger comes with this, and Pete's going, maybe we can bounce off each other, we can co-write more. And then it comes forward, basically, that actually one of their roadies was the primary songwriter here. And while Roger did contribute to lyrics and maybe some of the music here, he was not the main guy.
Right.
And Pete said, I was really disappointed, and, it shook my trust in Roger for a bit, but at the same time, it's a great song.
It's a damn good song.
It exists, and you can go hear it.
Yeah.
Cy Langston is fabulous.
Going down some other bonus tracks, even Keith's writing, song Girl's Eyes.
Yeah, and Girl's Eyes is Keith's best song.
It is.
God bless him.
One of 2 or 3 that he ever wrote with the band.
You say wrote. Cobwebs and Strange was something he stole. But I mean, when it comes down to it's
I Need
Girl's
You.
Eyes and I Need You and Wasp Man. It's I wonder which one I'm going to choose.
Oh, no, Girl's Eyes is a lovely tune.
Yeah, it's very sweet, and it has some very good soloing by Pete in the middle. It's clearly beefed up by the presence of other people there, especially John singing with Keith on it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good.
On disc 2, since it's the mono mix of the album, you get a lot of the singles that were released at the time because they didn't get stereo mixes, like Pictures of Lily, Doctor Doctor, their cover of the Rolling Stones songs, and some. And we didn't mention Marianne with a Shaky Hand was recorded multiple times. You get those multiple versions, including the one that ended up as the B-side, I Can See for Miles, and some early alternate mixes of a few songs. Nothing major, maybe just some vocals are missing or a guitar overdub is missing, and some new commercials. You get to hear the Sun Ads promo spot with Pete this time.
Yeah.
When I think of the Who Saw commercials, I think of Keith and John. So it's kind of cool to be I didn't know Pete
and Roger.
Oh, and Roger, of course.
Yeah, you don't really hear much of Pete and Roger in the commercials, with the exception of Odo Ono.
Right.
And yeah, that's interesting to hear, especially it really first time occurred to me I don't think I'd ever heard much of John speaking from this period, just in his normal speaking voice. And I was like, geez, that's not at all what I expected. Because I hear John in my head as...
He always sounds like this.
I hear John as being old man with cloudy voice, John.
Or Animal from the Muppets.
Yeah. Or his Boris voice, yeah.
Right, so that was kind of fun, and even some commercials that have been bootlegged, like Great Shakes, just get the whole thing. And Great Shakes, I was listening to it, I'm like, that's a cute ditty.
It's great.
It is great.
Yeah.
And
you get the Coke commercials, which were probably their best known ones outside of the album.
Yeah, but did those even get released at the time in any way?
They were part of TV spots.
Oh, okay, because I just assumed, it didn't make the album, so it didn't get released at all.
No, it saw the light of day in some form. It was just, and now here they are on CDs.
Right, and then also I feel so stupid for not realizing this. Their jingle for Top Gear, it's just the aux re-recorded.
Yeah.
With them shouting Top Gear over it.
Yep.
And I feel so stupid for the longest time I didn't pick that up. But anyway, like that one's a lot of fun. Even that, like Premier Drums, they're just, they have riffs or rhythms and just shouting the names of it. And also some covers at this time. Summertime Blues, which would become a live staple. They have a, pretty simple studio version of it.
There's this studio version that's different from the one that came out on Odds and Sods that they recorded a few years later.
Which was technically like, it was recorded in the studio but broadcast on BBC, but you can still call it a studio version.
Right.
Because it was done at their studio.
Right.
And they sent it to the BBC.
Yeah.
That one's a pretty good version as well. That one feels a little bit more oiled out. They had gotten more of a groove on it.
But it's not the live version, so screw it.
No, it's definitely not. And then one cover that I had no idea they did a studio version at all was there's take 3 of Shakin' All Over.
Yeah.
I thought that was 100% live track. No studio version was ever put down on tape.
Yeah, they tried it, and I can see why they didn't bother doing the studio version.
Yeah, it feels very basic tracks.
Yeah, it feels forced, which tended to be the way the Who were in the studio. Keep in mind, when it was the 4 of them, and even just, when after Keith had died, they made sure to always get all 4 of them together at the same time to record, because doing it any other way would have been impossible. They talk about that a few times in some of the documentaries that you can watch about them. I think particularly of Amazing Journey. I think it was Barney Barnes that actually said, like, doing it any other way would have been stupid. You couldn't have they play off each other. That's how they get their best performances. But even so, studio performances tend to be a little more restrained and not as good as live performances. The Who is a live band first and foremost.
There is an exception during this time, which has a great story and a great quote. So around this time, Keith Richards and Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones were arrested for marijuana possession. And so the Who had this idea of, like, we're not going to make any more of our music, we're going to record Rolling Stone songs until they get released. And so they did their first single, The Last Time Back with Under My Thumb. John is not on those tracks. Because he was away on his honeymoon.
And Pete was playing the bass. He had to call John and say, hey, can I do this?
Well, I believe he called to say, like, hey, John, like, can you come to the studio, because, they do work best as a 4-piece. And John was like, for what? Dude, I'm on my honeymoon. Like, what do you want? He's
John
like,
basically hung up on him.
well, not just that. He was like, well, we're doing this because, we're doing Rolling Stones songs. And John's kind of like, what? And he's like, because they were arrested for marijuana possession. John, the great quote he said was, Pete, Britain can release marijuana in the water for like care. Goodbye. he just couldn't be bothered.
No, he said that.
Basically, he was like, call me for when we're doing Who songs.
Oh, jeez.
Until then, I'm on my honeymoon. So that's like the one exception during this time. No, Pete does play bass on those tracks, and it's got a great story and a great quote from John. And that kind of leads me to disc 3 is the studio sessions. There's a lot, so to kind of, I guess, group a lot of these together, a lot of these are interesting because they're using the raw takes, and you're getting stereo mixes of tracks that never got a stereo mix, like The Last Time and Under My Thumb, and some tracks like Melancholia, take 1, you hear Pete on vocals, which I found interesting. You get to hear Relax, an early version of Relax, and then like a first attempt at recording it, and it's not the same. And I also kind of love during the sessions, we always think of Keith as, the running child, running wild. It's nice and refreshing for me to hear Keith be cooperative during these sessions. Like Pete's telling, like, can you do a count in, or the producer's saying, can you start over? And it's just really refreshing to me, like, what a great little band. They're not just a bunch of egos. What a great little band.
And they kind of were, but the impression that was perpetuated for a long time was that the Who did not get along as people. And that's kind of true, because they are very different personality-wise, but they held together and they were able to work and make great music. It wasn't until the Tommy album and the photo sessions that they did while they were recording that people saw, oh, they're not just like fighting, and there's not just histrionics in the studio all the time. It's like, no, they're working men doing what they do.
Right.
And I think that's really valuable to hear that as well as see it.
That was really refreshing. And the last track on disc 3, which is Magic Bus Take 6, you can hear John just starting to get bored with the song right away.
Just like, oh my god, I don't want to keep playing A.
Because since it's a raw take, there's no overdubs, like it's mixed in a pretty wide stereo, you can hear the bass very clearly, and it's one note the whole time. So that just made me laugh.
Yeah.
Disc 4, which you alluded to, The Road to Tommy, a lot of like recent 2018 mix. I say recent, 2018 was years ago. This box set has been in the works for a while.
Yeah.
I do enjoy the new mix of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with lots more vocals and maniacal laughter that we never heard before.
Oh yeah.
And then we were even playing Call Me Lightning. It's like, there's a banjo on there. Because I was like...
We thought that was piano parts because the crappy mixing on the original version of Lightning.
It never had a stereo mix.
Yeah.
And so here it's like, that was a banjo. It's like, good God. And then Dogs has a harpsichord. And even some like vocals have been kind of put back in. Fortune Teller had a couple backing vocals that were mixed out initially.
Yeah.
And then the last disc is a bunch of Pete demos, including tracks that I was kind of blown away by because I had heard of Pete writing a song called Do You Want Kids, Kids?
Yeah.
Which was for the same campaign as Little Billy, the anti-smoking thing.
Right.
And Little Billy was the only track that got released years later on Odds and Sods.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of being to be like, wow, kids who want Do You Want Kids, Kids, like actually effing exists.
Yeah.
It's not just something that
Here
Pete,
it is.
It's not just something that Pete said, yeah, I wrote this song. It's like, it's nice that we actually get to hear it.
Yeah, there are a couple of songs on here that are on the demo disc that didn't manage to make it into full-on Who tracks for whatever reason. We'll never know. But then it's also just fascinating. I love that they're really leaning into the idea that people want to hear Pete's demos and hear the thought process, the songwriting and crafting process that went into these final versions.
Yeah.
So like pretty much every deluxe edition we're getting now will have a number of Pete demos, and I dig that a lot.
Me too. The only thing I'm questioning is some demos that have existed before are not included. Like Call Me Lightning and Magic Bus are not on this set.
Sure, but you can get those on his Scoop collections, which are blatant. They're just said, these are collections of Pete Townshend's demos.
Right. And on this side of the section, you've got pictures of Lily, which was already released, but this is like a new mix. It's a little bit longer.
Sure.
So the only reason I can think of is like songs that didn't get re-released. It's kind of like, well, there's nothing more we can do for the demo. The Call Me About Lightning demo, it's 2 minutes. Nothing more exists, so there's nothing else to do with it. Pictures of Lily, like, oh yeah, there's a minute and a half that I had to chop off of another scoop, so here, have the whole thing.
Yeah.
And oh, speaking of the whole thing, I know I'm talking about a lot of tracks.
Sure.
But one more that I really like is Odorono Take 3.
Yeah.
Is the whole song.
Yeah, includes the final chorus. Chorus.
So you don't have to be editors on the previous reissues and stick them together.
Right.
It's all there.
There you go.
On all of its glory.
Yeah.
The outtake version of Our Love Was Take 2. The guitar solo starts a little bit early before it traditionally starts on the record. So maybe it was faded in because it's like, oh, it wasn't supposed to start soon. But so on the stereo mix, it's kind of like fade in. Remix, it's like, we'll just cover up that wart.
Yeah.
It was nice to hear all the John and Keith commercials as one track.
Yeah, that was a fun little side note. As for the tracks that I like,
I said too much. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. The ones that you didn't talk about too much, Glow Girl is beautiful.
Had an organ on it.
Yeah.
That was cool.
And it's fascinating. I think Melancholia is the best song that The Who never released.
Yes.
That for a while Pete didn't know they'd even recorded it.
Yeah, whoops.
And God, I go into it all the time thinking like, what if they just put this as a single somewhere or a B-side? People would have been buying like, dude, this song, this is it. This is the new thing. Because I hear like, grunge in that.
It's damn good. I think recently Pete spoke about Melancholia, and maybe I think he said something like the public wouldn't have been ready for it because do you know what the original title was? The Virus.
That's right. Yeah.
I know.
That's awkward for now, but
right.
Even so, that's I really wish it had come out sooner. I also really like Little Billy. Little Billy's fun. Dr. and Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is super cool.
Yeah, hearing the basic track on disc 3 and then disc 4, it's like a new mix of it, but with stuff you hadn't heard before.
Yeah. I've always loved Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and I wish I'd been listening to it for years more than I have, but it's, you gotta check out some early John, man.
Yeah, it's definitely good stuff. And
I think, last thing I want to mention is In the Hall of the Mountain King, which is, you've heard it before, you just probably don't know what it's called. It's that song.
Yeah, that one.
But they do a kick-ass rock version of it with creepy backing vocals and John buzzing into his brass mouthpieces. It's phenomenal.
It's definitely great. No, in the 90s, we weren't old enough to appreciate The Who at the time, but with the reissue of The Who Sell Out, with like half of the CD is the original album.
Yeah.
The other half is bonus tracks, and then if you pick up the 30 years of Maximum R&B box set, on the back it's just full-on track, previously unreleased. You can tell they definitely took a lot of the load from the Who Sell Out sessions and put it on there because they did so much. Even into 68, when the album was already out, they're like, well, let's continue recording music.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing, all this stuff that exists. Obviously, we didn't do track by track, but we can tell you we definitely had a lot of highlights and things to look out for if you aren't familiar with it.
Yeah. On that note, I think we better wrap this up.
Right. The only to kind of wrap this up, kind of just talking about the album in general, final thoughts. One thing we didn't really touch on, because I don't know if it's totally necessary, is that this album was definitely liked at the time, even by fellow music peers. We totally glossed over the fact that I Can See for Miles led to Helter Skelter.
Oh, well, yeah.
Even though that's a well-known story, we don't need to be the one to tell you it. But if you haven't heard that story, go find it. Paul talks about it a lot. But even though, fun fact, people still can't find the interview that Paul claims that he read, which is interesting. So it's kind of like, Paul,
this might be somewhat apocryphal.
Are you Nelson Mandela-ing it on us?
Possibly.
But if Paul remembers the interview, Paul even says, I can't remember the song that Pete was talking about, but it had to be I Can See for Miles.
Yeah.
The dirtiest, loudest song ever. And it has made Rolling Stone magazine's 500 albums of all time all 3 times. They did a list in 2004, an updated one in 2012, and then recently in 2020. It's in all 3 iterations.
Yep.
And usually it places in the top half, so definitely.
I think the last one it was like 120.
Oh yeah,
500. So it is a good album.
Definitely well liked, and for someone like me who only likes the Who's albums, with each passing one, this one I can look back to like it led to some great things, even though some things in this album aren't that great personally.
Right. If you wanted to rank all of the albums together, you can have like My Generation. Really good debut. A quick one. Really interesting change on a theme, but definitely related. The Who Sell Out is their first fully identifiable Who album.
I think I would agree with that.
And their first, awesome album. It wasn't until Tommy they're like, okay, these guys are just legends now.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. It's the first great Who album by name, as
opposed to an album by the Who.
Right, exactly. So nothing but good praise from us. So if you haven't heard it, go find it. The Super Deluxe Edition is out on iTunes. The remix is, I think, on Amazon Music, so you can still get it there.
I'm pretty sure that the remix is also on iTunes.
I could be wrong. Last time I checked, I didn't see it. But the point is, there's so many mixes and deluxe editions, reconfigurations of this album, you can easally find it.
Yeah.
So definitely go find it.
My preferred version is definitely the remix, just because it's a lot simpler to wade through. But also, and there's another version that I've listened to. Have you ever heard Petra Hayden's version of the Who Sell Out?
Only heard of it. I never actually heard it myself.
It is really surprisingly good. In 2005, singer Petra Hayden put out a cover album of the Who Sell Out, where she recreated all of the commercial jingles and all of the songs using a cappella, multi-tracking herself. And I'd never heard it before preparing for this review, and it's fascinating. It's lovely. It's great. and Pete himself really liked it. He thought it was fascinating to hear it, and he felt guilty by enjoying his own songs again, he said.
Aww,
and that
good for him.
And then also, this was a treasure to him. That he felt this was more important to me than winning any kind of Grammy.
I can see why, because, you know, in his opinion, as he said it himself, like, the single I Can See for Miles didn't sell, the album didn't sell.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't go unheard, Pete. It definitely did not go unheard.
No, she had to listen to it a million times to get all of those tracks down.
Right.
So yeah, check out Petra Hayden sings The Who Sell Out. It's a good time.
Even, like you said, the jingles and, like, all the fade-ins and whatnot into the jingles.
Yeah, they're all there. Please let us know what you thought of the album. It's one of our favorites, clearly. Tell us what you like or dislike about it, which is your preferred mix of it.
Because there are 3 distinct ones.
At least. And and also let us know what you think of Petra's if you've heard it.
Right.
And I think that's about all we've got, Tom.
Yeah, that's all we got. So be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And
give us more subscribers so we can afford sponsors and make those stupid ads with.
Yeah. Thanks so much for listening, guys. I'm Tom.
I'm Garrett.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Hey everyone, it's Tom from Triple Threat. Thank you so much for listening to our review of The Who Sell Out. Be sure to let us know what you think of the album and our review in the comments down below, and we will see you all next time.
Because Mike Love would have an aneurysm.
God, he would.
I hope he does.
I don't think we should keep that.
Okay, so
just something that I mentioned earlier, that the Who only got better with each album. That people who love Tommy and Who's Next, which is to say if you're human, they kind of love the Who Sell Out, because it's like, it wasn't just they went from A to C. This is like, you know, they went A, B, C, and the Who Sell Out is kind of like right in the middle, almost teetering on, you know, sort of C section already.
Yeah, and yet,
remix is like definitely good, but I think the album is pretty goodly mixed already. That's not good English, but you get what I'm saying.
It's well mixed.
Yeah, yes. I know, it's well mixed. So. Right.
I think that came right before Odorono.
Premier Drums. No, it comes at the end of Odorono.
Oh, okay.
It goes Premier Drums and then ba da ba da ba da ding. Oh no, are we gonna get copyright for that? No, we're not gonna copyright because my commercials suck.
Nah.
And then it goes into the next track. So yeah, Premier Drums comes at the end of Odorono.
I think so.
So maybe that's it. Keith is like, okay, my time to shine. Odorono chorus. You're out.
No, it doesn't. No, it's the Smooth Sailing comes right after Odorono. It leads right into Tattoo, I thought. It's been so long.
It has. I mean, it's so long. I literally heard it like for the 3rd time.
There's just not that there's so long. There's so many of them. Yeah. Anyway, but
side note. We can't cut this. You are right. It is Smooth Sailing.
Yeah.
And this was not. Anyway.
Okay. We'll fix it in post.
Absolutely, we will.